If you've ever wanted to make fresh salsa with garden tomatoes and jalapenos, then you are in the right place. In this video, I'm going to share with you how easy it is to can homemade fresh salsa. And don't worry, because I was a rookie too. Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to another video. So this all started with this huge batch of jalapenos that I picked up at the farmer's market, and I had the inspiration to turn it into salsa. It has been a long time since I have done any at-home canning, and so I decided to take you along with me. But in this video, I'm going to be sharing how to make a simple garden salsa using the recipe from this Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. This is a cookbook that Adam got me a few years back, and I've made a few things out of it, but wanted to try the jalapeno salsa recipe. So you can see here all of the things that you need. I will type this recipe out in the description box below if you would like to make it as well. Now, I did double this recipe, but for one batch of the recipe, you'll need 3 cups of chopped, cored, and peeled tomatoes. So what I did was I washed my tomatoes, I cored them, I halved them, and I put them face down on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. This is a super easy way to peel tomatoes. When you make salsa or marinara sauce, you don't want the peels in there, and the traditional method of kind of blanching them and shocking them in cold water does work, but this method is much quicker. I would definitely recommend it. So I put these in the oven at 400 degrees, and you can see after about 20 to 25 minutes, the skins just peel right off. So just kind of let them sit there until they are cool to the touch, and then you can easily remove all of the skins. Try to remove some of the seeds. I did leave some of them in there just because I wasn't being super picky or meticulous about it, but you do definitely not want to include all of the water and seeds when you puree the tomatoes. Otherwise your salsa will be quite watery. So you can see here I have my tomato flesh in the food processor. You can definitely make this recipe without one and just chop everything by hand, but if you have a food processor, it makes it much easier. So just pulse the tomatoes until they are the texture that you would like them to be. This is definitely a personal preference. If you like a chunkier salsa, you can not pulse them quite as much, or if you like it smooth, you can definitely make it go a little bit longer. So back to the jalapenos, I did give these a wash in the sink, and after they were all washed, it was time to process all of them. So if you guys saw my video a couple of weeks ago, I talked about some kitchen gadgets that I had tried out, and this particular one came in very handy. It's a jalapeno corer, and I actually got this at Aldi, but they also have them on Amazon, so I will link it down below. If you're going to be processing any large amount of jalapenos, I would definitely recommend this. It makes it super easy. You basically just put it in, twist it around, it takes the core and the seeds out, and then I chopped these jalapenos into quarters and put them into a dish. So the recipe calls for 3 cups of chopped jalapenos, but since I was doubling this, I needed about 6 cups. I would probably, if I had to do this over again, use gloves. I normally do use gloves if I'm, processing a large amount of peppers, but for some reason I didn't think of it on this particular day, and I wish I would have, because I did accidentally touch my face and burn myself a little bit. Even when you wash your hands, that pepper oil still has a tendency to stay on your skin. But at any rate, after I got all those cut up, I put them into the food processor and just basically pulsed these like I did the tomatoes until they were finely chopped. Again, you can definitely do this with a knife, but if you have a food processor, it makes it so much easier. You guys see me use my food processor all the time. Honestly, it's one of my most used kitchen tools, so I will link the specific one I have down below. I would recommend it without reservations. It is a 14-cup Cuisinart. So now that I had my tomatoes and my jalapenos all prepped, it was time to get everything started with the canning. So this is a large water bath canner that I picked up on Amazon earlier this season. This is actually my first time using it, and I would definitely recommend it. It is large enough to hold some of the taller and larger mason jars, as well as the regular pint jars, and so you can definitely accommodate many different sizes. And it also has a rack in it, which allows allows you to easily lift out the jars and put them back in, which I'll show you in a little bit. So the first thing that you need to do is prep your jars and your sealing lids. So for the lids, I'm just putting them in a saucepan and I'm going to fill that up with water. And you don't want to boil these, just put them on the stove and bring them to a really low simmer and then just keep them warm until you're ready to use them. One thing I really like about this ball canning cookbook is that it really does go step by step. So even if you're sort of a beginner like me with hot water canning, you can definitely do it. Do not be scared. So I went ahead and boiled my water, and the next thing that you need to do is kind of, I guess not sterilize the jars, but just make sure that they are clean and that they are hot. These jars have been washed in the dishwasher previously, so I knew that they were clean and sanitized. So I'm just going to take those, and I'm using this sort of jar tong thing, which I'll link down below also. I turned the hot water off and just basically put the jars in there and put the lid on while I finished making the salsa. So for the onions for the salsa, I had some red onion and some white onion, so I'm going to use both, and I'm putting these also in the food processor. For this batch, I needed 2 cups of chopped onion as well as some garlic. About 12 cloves of garlic is what I needed. I had some larger ones, so I just kind of approximated, but I'm basically going to pulse those until they get to the desired texture. I like my onions a little bit finer, so I did process those a little bit more. And next is cilantro. You definitely need that for fresh salsa. So this was about 2 bunches of cilantro. I only ended up using about half of it, but I did wash this and set it out on the counter to dry a little bit. And then yes, I'm also going to use my food processor yet again to process the cilantro. It makes it so easy. You don't have to do all that chopping. It's awesome. So here are my onions and my cilantro in my big stock pot. I'm going to add in the chopped jalapenos, and then I am also going to add my pureed tomatoes. So I had about 6 cups of the tomatoes total, and then you can just stir that together and then you'll add your seasonings. So essentially you're going to cook this salsa for about 10 minutes on the stovetop. The salsa is going to be hot. You're going to put the hot salsa into hot jars, and then you're going to process them again in the hot water bath. The lids will suck down and they will be fresh for, I don't know how long you can store this actually. It does say in the cookbook, I think it's like 12 months or something like that. You can store this salsa in the pantry. Don't quote me on that. Look in the book. So for this recipe, you also need some apple cider vinegar. It's really important to follow the recipes as written in this cookbook because they are specifically written to have a certain acidity so that you can use a hot water bath canner and not a pressure canner. So I added my apple cider vinegar, I added some oregano, some salt, and I also added some cumin and gave that a stir. And then basically you bring the salsa up to a boil over medium-high heat. Cook that for about 10 minutes. I cooked it covered so that it didn't reduce down too much. And then you can basically turn that off while you kind of prepare your jars. So you can take the jars out of the hot water bath one by one, and then I have a wide mouth funnel. You can get those on Amazon as well. It makes putting the sauce or the salsa into the jars so much easier. So you basically just ladle that in, and it will tell you in the recipe how much headspace you need to leave at the top of the jar, either a 1/2 inch or an inch or 1/4 of an inch. I probably could have put a little bit more salsa in this one, but whatever. And then I took my sealing lid out of the hot water bath, and then the rings, you don't need to sanitize those. In fact, you don't want them hot because you want to be able to, you know, screw them onto the jars. These particular tongs are very handy. I would definitely recommend them. You can operate them with one hand since they're spring loaded. So I'm just going to continue filling my hot jars with the hot salsa, putting the sealing lids on, and then screwing the ring down finger tight. I ended up with a few different various sizes of jars just because I made some smaller and some larger, but you can kind of see here how you want to use tongs with all of your materials so that you don't contaminate anything. Obviously you have clean hands, but you don't want to get bacteria anywhere and not have your cans be stable. So here were all of the jars of salsa that I got out of that batch. 2 of the jars were quite large, so those will make nice gifts. I'm looking forward to making more of this summer, and I actually want to make some tomato sauce as well. So you take your full jars and put them back in the hot water bath. So this, you can see here how the rack in the canner kind of sits up on the edge of the pot, and then you can easily lower it down in there, which is really convenient. I have canned before not using a pot like this and basically just used tongs and a cooling rack in the bottom of a pot, and it does work, but this is much easier. So I lowered those down into there, and then you need to process these in boiling water for about 10 minutes. So once the jars are in there, just make sure they are completely covered, bring them up to a boil and process them for 10 minutes. Unfortunately, one of my jars broke in the canner. You can see here how it fractured along the piece there. That's why my water looks pink. It's because my salsa jar exploded, but that happens sometimes. I think this was actually an older jar that I used, and so sometimes there will be like a hairline crack in the jar and you won't even realize it until you boil it, and boom, it shatters. So, oh well, I still had plenty of salsa left. So I got these 2 larger jars of salsa, 2 of the pint jars, and then 1 of the smaller jars. So I did save a little bit of this, and we tasted it with chips. It was really delicious. So I definitely recommend this recipe, and I am looking forward to trying more. So I hope that you guys got some inspiration out of this. Let me know if you have canned before or if you're thinking of trying it. I would encourage you to do it. It's super fun. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.